Hello and happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, one and all.
This is the Two Mats Q&A Sunday session brought to you by the subscribers of the New European.
It is.
Do join that wonderful crowd of people.
Our Sunday service.
Yeah. First question.
Okay. The Labour Party is promising hope at its conference in Liverpool. How hopeful are the Mats? That's from the wonderfully named Debbie Downer, 83. Presumably not 83 years old. Well, maybe she is, I don't know. Stockton-on-Tees. What do you think, Matt? Are you feeling full of...
I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer myself on this right now. I hope so. I'm glad that they're doing it in Liverpool. Fantastic venue.
Good selection.
Great place to do it, especially for the Labour Party. But, I mean, so many amazing hotels and restaurants in Liverpool now that it truly is a
But that's not enough for hope, is it?
That's not going to do it for hope. I don't know. No, I'm not hopeful. I think this strange policy of kind of optimism management has been,
to put it mildly,
you know, I mean, I don't know where it's come from, because prior to the election, everything was, you know, the mission and nationals, get this country back on its feet, growth, blah, blah, blah. Ever since the election, it's like someone switched off the optimism button and it's now, everything's shit, everything's going to hell in a handcart, there's no money for anything, just abandon all hope,
you know. And it's funny because the obviously Keir Starmer's office briefed the Thursday press that it was going to be hope-tastic, right? and one of the things that was revealed was that the election campaign's slogan for Labour was just change.
Yeah,
change.
That's right.
But we're moving on. Yeah. Because the slogan for the conference is going to be change begins. And I was thinking about why this irritated me so much, and I realised that it sounds like the episode name of a really bad Star Wars movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Star Wars, you know, episode 96, change begins. You know,
change
you
begins.
See the crawl. Keir Starmer has defeated the evil Sudak Empire. Rachel Reeves has said there's going to have to be cuts at the Trade Federation. And there's something a little bit desperate about saying, oh, don't worry, there's going to be lots of hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, maybe they can take inspiration from the great city of Liverpool itself.
Yes.
Because, let me tell you, when I was growing up, if I haven't told you before, when I was growing up in Liverpool, it was on the bones of its arse. It was on the bones of its arse.
Yes, and now it's not.
There were literally areas of Liverpool around the docks that were rubble left over from the Luftwaffe, right? It was, and the Tory government was abandoning it literally. You know, Geoffrey Howe firing off memos saying just manage decline, close the place down. Now go and look at it. It's magnificent. So, and that wasn't just about economic prudence. That was about an audacious vision for that city. Yeah. And it didn't come from the Tory party. It came from the European Union, and it came from Liverpool's own will to survive and thrive. But there's plenty of that will in Britain. They've got to tap into it, you know.
And I think, you know, just to be not necessarily fair to Starmer, but just to consider the alternative, let us not forget that coming up for a year ago now, the governing party of the time, Rishi Sunak, in Manchester, saying it's time for a change and we are it. Yes. At the Axed HS2 announced that he was going to ban smoking for various people. Yeah. And all around him, as you recall, Nigel Farage was dancing with Priti Patel. I mean,
those guys were on acid. I mean, it
really was. It
really
was chemically challenged.
Weird, yeah.
So although I think that, you know, I'm not hugely hopeful about the hope, one has to acknowledge, you know, that it is better than where we were a year ago, which is not much, but it's something.
Do you know another little toothy anecdote about hope? You know what the name of the street is between... I mean, Liverpool, in its long history, was quite a sectarian place.
Absolutely.
And most of these kind of Celtic cities could be at their worst. And the street between the Catholic cathedral, known as Paddy's Wigwam, and the Anglican cathedral, which is a magnificent building designed by Giles Gilbert Scott.
Paddy's Wigwam.
Well, it looks like a wigwam.
I know, but I've never heard it called that.
Paddy's Wigwam, it's known as in Liverpool. And, but they're joined by Hope Street. And
right.
So it was always felt like hope could have the power to bring.
But was that honestly named, Matt? I mean,
that wasn't named in any kind of.
Did it manifest itself?
It manifested
on that road,
itself.
was there a lot of hope? Can you honestly say, looking back on your upbringing? Sorry, I'm sure there was a lot of hope.
There was actually.
No.
You've got some. You got the Royal Philharmonic. You got a great pub called the Philharmonic Pub.
No, actually, Scousers are hopeful people.
It's fair to say that a couple of streets away, in the early 80s, were absolutely ripped to shreds by the Toxteth riots. So it has had its moments.
Every city has its riots.
But you do go through these cycles of destruction and build, and that's what we need. Anyway, the point is, we need some optimism, don't we? From the Prime Minister.
Look. I mean, bottom line, we're the next thing after this will be the budget, which will be very, very depressing.
Yeah.
So Starmer needs to set I think his speech is on Tuesday. He needs to set out a roadmap which explains. I mean, I'm not expecting him to do a kind of Kennedy, nor perhaps even a lifetime on this planet, but let us begin. I don't think it's going to be that soaring oratory.
Yeah.
But it can't just be we've had a terrible inheritance from the Tories and you're going to have a rotten life.
Yeah.
It has to be. This is where there has to be a shining city on a hill a bit.
And a pro tip here: fixing the foundations. Isn't it?
No, and just saying, and everyone's got to reform before they're going to get any money. No, I mean people are at the they're running on fumes. The country's running on fumes. It needs to be told where this is going, because actually, what is hope? If you look at it in a very sort of kind of dispassionate way, the point of hope is to make human beings believe that the adversities that they're going through have a purpose and will lead to a better place.
Yeah.
It's not just a sort of, it's not woo-woo.
And also the other thing about hope is that it's free. It's free and it's uplifting.
And it's essential.
Yeah. You don't have to buy hope.
Because the alternative is, Trump and Farage and the AfD and all the rest of it.
And bloody chronic misery.
And it is now a clear and present danger that. Saying be hopeful, Keir, is not just a, polite imprecation. It's a get on with it.
Yeah. Thank you, Debbie Downer 83. Next question, please. From North of the Equator 2094. May I ask the two Matts what they think of the article by Michael Casey in The Spectator titled "Tony Blair Wants to Launder His Past," which highlights Blair's cosy and financially lucrative relationship with autocrats, and whether it's a bit icky that your publication is helping to promote his new book on leadership. I'm truly interested to hear your thoughts. Well, no, never let it be said that we shy away from difficult questions.
No, we don't. Look,
let me deal with the ickiness of the.
You deal with the ickiness
book
as the founder and editor in chief.
Yeah. So, there's no question that Tony Blair is to this day divisive to the point of toxicity. That a lot of people absolutely loathe him for the Iraq War
and the fact that his office has engaged in consultancies with some less than ideal clients.
That's right. But on the other side, that book, I read it and I thought this is a really great book.
Yeah.
It is full of big insights and it's very well written. And I thought there will be some people out there who'd like it. Well, okay, if you don't like it, don't subscribe at this juncture, or subscribe and we'll give you another gift. But are we promoting his new book? I suppose we are, but we're trying to sell the New European, so there's a greater good involved.
There's a greater good, but also it's a very good book. I mean, here's the problem, which is that, Blair is a towering figure.
Yeah.
Did he make errors? Yes, absolutely. But also he won 3 parliamentary majorities, the aggregate of which is more than Thatcher's.
Yeah.
And more to the point, he used those majorities to do a lot of good to the country and bring a lot of spending. And when Andy Cowper was with us last week talking about the NHS, it was interesting how he said, that by the end of New Labour, the NHS was in a pretty good space.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as if he was just sitting there plotting his post number 10 future. And the other thing is this about his sort of so-called shady connections, which is that, okay, but I know for a fact that in the last year, he has been twice zooming around the Middle East at the behest of various governments as an unofficial envoy, trying to bring peace to a part of the world that is resisting it rather strongly.
Yeah.
And he does that in lots of other contexts as well. And one of the reasons for that is he knows everyone.
Yeah.
And, he knows MBS in Saudi as well. And a lot of people would say, well, he shouldn't. Okay. But, having people who of his experience who can go on a mission that is not necessarily official is, I'm afraid, in the real world, sometimes very useful.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I can't force anyone to, of course, if people don't like Tony Blair, that's up to them, right? But the impulse to instantly apply a purity test to everyone and everything is a road to perdition, because no leader, none. If Jeremy Corbyn had become prime minister, do you think that his record would have been, spotless? Really?
Yeah.
It's just not the way to look at people of that stature. I'm not saying you should be fawning, by the way.
Yeah.
Where they should be criticised.
Yeah.
But I don't think, and I think the idea that he contaminates everything he touches is just nonsense.
Well, I think there's a lot of bitterness, which, if you're predisposed to dislike him because you think that he was responsible for what happened in Iraq, which to stick the entirety of that blame onto one person is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but anyway, if that's how you're inclined to think, then you're gonna loathe the fact that he's now worth tens and tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sit perfectly comfortably with me that he's clearly very driven in accumulating wealth. Now, okay, so fine, it's not my cup of tea, but nor is it something that I would damn him for. And in fact, if he was an American, he'd be celebrated to the highest points in the sky, for being successful. It does seem to be something that we have an inclination to resent.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, and I don't know what north of the equator's politics are, so this is not a personal point, but a lot of people on the left side of the house will never forgive Tony Blair for winning elections.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
The idea that Labour was in power for 13 years.
Yeah. And the enormous good that 13 years did.
That was the real crime.
From the Good Friday Agreement.
I have to say that, although I understand that officially Iraq is the stain, the original sin, I think that the real original sin was he won.
Right.
And therefore broke with a glorious Labour tradition.
Yeah.
And how much more fun it is to be, what was the great line that Mandelson always used to quote, was some councillor had said to him, Peter, we must not compromise with the electorate, right? I mean, there is always that battle is a real one. And of course, no one was more of an avatar for compromising with the electorate than Mr. Tony. So, he's, again, we talked on the Friday podcast about John Major. Tony Blair is a huge resource in national life. Use him. Yeah. You don't have to like him.
Also, I think this thing, just to close this off, but where he says Michael Casey in The Spectator says Tony Blair wants to launder his past, or that's at least the headline on Michael Casey's article. I don't think that's the case at all. I think Tony Blair is actually quite transparent about his operations.
And certainly the book is not about that at all.
No.
I mean, he might not welcome this comparison, but there are symmetries with Kissinger.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
There are symmetries with Kissinger.
Definitely. Yeah, and especially how he's perceived. You get people calling Kissinger a great statesman. You get people calling Kissinger a genocidal maniac. So take your pick. Okay, north of the equator, 2094. Well, I don't know if you've got any result from that, but at least we discussed it as honestly as we could.
Let us know what you think.
Let's take a quick break and come back for some more questions in a moment. Welcome back. Next question.
Should Kamala Harris be more explicit about policy and rely less on vibes? From Roger in Blackheath.
I think she's definitely got to start getting into this, hasn't she?
I do.
I think J.D. Vance said a million idiotic, lousy things, but one thing he did say, which was right, was that she has got to start getting into the public debate about this much more,
And, this is going out on a Sunday, and by my calculation, there are 44 days left to polling day from Sunday. So, that's nothing. And And on Thursday, the sort of blue chip New York Times Siena poll, the latest one, came out. And this was the first big poll since the debate, the ABC News debate. And it shows her and Trump on a dead heat, 47
Amazing.
each. Now, there is one item of good news, which is she's ahead 50 to 46 in Pennsylvania, which is becoming the key state in this election. But, basically it's a coin toss still.
Amazing.
And I think that, I was thinking about this on the way in, and I think part of the problem is that there's a false dichotomy slightly between vibes and policy, which is she's expected to be joyous and charismatic and charming. That's the play so far. But actually, there are vibes attached to speaking seriously about policy and looking presidential and communicating seriousness and strength. You don't have to choose. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that in poll after poll after poll after poll, it comes up with, we don't know enough about her. Now, that is more lethal than it sounds, because people don't elect candidates they don't know enough about.
Yeah.
And now time is really short.
Because what they won't do, if it's the people who are wavering.
Yes.
Who will think, oh God, well, I'm definitely not voting for Donald Trump, but can I really be bothered dragging my arse out off the sofa to go and vote for her? I don't know enough about her. Well, and she needs those people to get off the sofa.
I mean, there has to be always in any campaign, political campaign, particularly a presidential campaign, the why has to be answered. Now, Trump's why is all about brutal, stop Haitians from eating cats, stop migrants from coming in, close down the fake news, imprison your political enemies. It's all hateful, horrible stuff. But there is a why.
Yeah.
And the question with Kamala Harris is, I think that why has not yet really been answered. I mean, Turn the Page was a good start, but we haven't really moved much further than that.
There was the excellent, again, plugging our competitors, but the Rest is Politics US. Katty Kay and Scaramucci, the Mooch, which is really, really, really good.
It's a great podcast.
And actually, increasingly, I'm hearing people talk about that more than even the great Alistair and Rory.
I can't believe that.
Can you imagine that?
Anyway, no, I can't believe.
I'm sure Alistair will see to that. There'll be an accident at some point along the way. But he was saying that Trump's great strength is that he has this playbook where, he never apologizes for anything. He never concedes defeat about anything. And he always goes with his gut. He's listened to everybody, but don't listen too much.
He's pure instinct.
He's pure instinct. And that is something that I don't think anybody would say about Kamala Harris.
No, not at all. And I think that actually it's a shame, because I think she is hungry. I was just thinking about, previous Democratic presidential contenders. If you go back to the debates, you look at Walter Mondale. That guy knew he was going to lose.
Yeah.
Michael Dukakis knew he was going to lose, right?
Yeah.
Bill Clinton, he wanted to win.
Yeah.
Barack Obama, he wanted to win.
Yeah.
Right? She wants to win, but she's not willing to address, I think, the problem. I mean, it's interesting because I think I'm hoping to write about this week in the paper, which is that the split screen that did her so much good with the debate, which was her looking in disbelief as Trump talked nonsense about cats and dogs, and But there's another split screen, which is the split screen that the Trump campaigner sending out these very, very targeted digital ads, and on the left they have Kamala 4 years ago saying something, very radical, and then Kamala on the right saying something very moderate.
Right.
And the point is,
who do you believe?
Who do you believe?
Yeah,
and the problem is, if you don't know, you won't vote for her.
Yeah. All right. Well,
time
Roger,
is short.
A very short but excellent question. Thank you for that one. Next question, please.
Is Mossad's use of exploding pagers and walkie-talkies a sophisticated and highly targeted attack on terrorism, or is it terrorism? Andrew Pennington in Hull. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely an attack on a terrorist organisation.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
But when you're attack strategy inevitably includes the death of children and innocent bystanders, and inevitably, then it does make it harder to understand what's the difference between the way a terrorist goes about their business and a way a state goes about its business in dealing with a terrorist. And I think it's such a fascinating story, this, because obviously you've got the whole technological aspect to it, and the whole, Mossad recreating these defunct brands and setting up Hungarian suppliers. And, it's an extraordinary spy story, isn't it? And
it's real tradecraft.
But then you look at the funerals of children and people getting their hands blown off in shops and stuff like this, and you just really wonder, is that an appropriate way for a nation state to behave?
Look, I mean, we've been round the houses on this, I mean, the problem is this, which is that this is a regional war now, and Hezbollah is a arm of the Iranian, state. And when it's described as a terrorist organization, that's true, but it's also a paramilitary subset of a hostile state that wants to see Israel eradicated.
Yeah.
Now, the Israeli comeback to this is, so we're not allowed. I mean, by the way, Hezbollah has been firing hundreds and hundreds of missiles over
indiscriminately,
and has displaced more than 60,000 Israelis. So there is a backstory to this.
Yeah.
The Israeli unofficial comeback to this, because they haven't yet acknowledged they've done it, is so when we fire missiles, that's wrong. So when we drop bombs, that's wrong. So when we send in soldiers, that's wrong. Now we use something ingenious. Mm-hmm. And of course, people who shouldn't die. Yeah. That's wrong too.
Yeah.
What is it you want us to do?
Yeah.
And I say that not with kind of polemical force, but just I actually don't think there's, I mean, depressingly, because we're now heading towards the anniversary of October the 7th, and who would have thought that we'd be here?
A full year.
A full year. I don't, and I say, and this is the bit that really kind of depressed me, is that I don't see it ending Netanyahu or not. It is now escalating into a full-blown regional conflict. And
this is, I mean, the Americans, I was reading the New York Times, the Americans are in despair and
yes, they are.
at this particular action.
Yes.
Because from an American point of view, I think, when the Israelis say, what do you want us to do? The answer is, well, as little as possible, please. Just contain it as much as it can be contained.
To which the Israeli answer is icy. So containment means
just keep getting slapped.
Keep getting slapped. And I think one of the other things is an Israel-specific one, which is Mossad has always tried to demoralize the leadership, the apparat of its enemies. So the most explosive example of this was after the Munich massacre of 11 Israeli athletes in 1972. There was which was the subject of Spielberg's film Munich. There was Operation Wrath of God, which was a covert Mossad operation, and a whole bunch of Black September and associated Palestinian people were killed. And a lot of people outside Israel said, this is absolutely wrong and shouldn't have happened. But Mossad's argument was, they know where we are. That's what happens when you
cause and effect.
That's cause and effect.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with the politics of the Middle East, I always find, is that the Western prism on it tends to be very much to do with the just war, and I understand that, and of course, and it should be, because that's the way we see things. But I think people underestimate the sheer brutality of Middle Eastern conflict.
Yeah.
The only thing that is respected is strength.
Yeah.
And the long-term answer to this, obviously, which is that we want a two-state solution. We want the West Bank and Gaza to be prosperous and properly industrialized, and at some point, by the way, the West is going to have to put its hand in its pocket,
big time,
and do 10 Marshall plans but we're a long way from that,
unfortunately.
Well, so I understand the question, but I'm afraid I don't think it's the, I mean,
It's not that simple, is it?
It's not so much that. It's a perfectly legitimate question, but answering it advances you nowhere. I'm sure lots of people see the Israeli state as terrorists. Okay, and then what?
Yeah. All right. Andrew, thank you for your question. We got time for one more question?
Aha! Okay. Now we're talking.
Good. Della from Brussels. Della, I enjoyed the Matt's robust defence of swearing last week. We haven't sworn at all in the last two episodes, I don't think.
We've been very fucking well controlled.
Yeah. Who are your own favourite exponents of the brutal art of profanity?
Good question.
Have you got?
Well, yeah, a couple. Obviously you have to tip your cap to cats. Sorry, Haitians.
Tip your cat into the cooker.
To Kenneth Tynan.
Yes.
Who was the first person to say fuck live on television in 1965. Yeah. Theatre critic. But for me, the gold standard of swearing is the world's first podcasters, who were Pete Cook and Dudley Moore as Derek and Clive, right? Yes. I mean, I think that all podcasts are actually beige versions of Derek and Clive.
My God, beige.
So beige, So that's my two, I mean, as you and I know, sort of not safe for work stuff.
If you're not familiar with the oeuvre, then
some of it's on YouTube.
Listen to it with headphones on.
Yes,
away from children.
Go to the one about the Pope.
If you think we're bad when we occasionally let loose, honestly, are off the scale.
They are off the scale. Who are your swearing heroes?
Well, I love it when posh people swear.
Yes,
and I've never forgotten a wonderful,
very good spot.
There was a wonderful documentary on Alan Clark, and he was sort of Thatcher's kind of ministerial, and he adored Thatcher, didn't he? God, really fancied her and had this.
Very strange
existence, yeah. But this documentary followed him around, and it was in his stately home, and he was sitting in this red Chesterfield high-backed armchair with a sort of very antique wooden table with a crystal glass of scotch and a roaring fire raging on, and he was reading Viz magazine.
Brilliant.
Right? And he said, I love Viz. I find it most hilarious. I love the letters pages most of all. Here's a good one. Here, taxi drivers. Why don't you pop into your local garage and get your indicators fixed? That way the rest of us will know where the fuck you're going. And he just sat there, and I just thought...
Posh people swearing is very good, isn't it? It's really is.
Brilliant weapon they have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of covered last week why we think it's important, but it is interesting how there are some real high points. Yeah. And you're right, different social groups swearing are very funny.
Also, I mean, obviously we don't mention the C word because we find it offensive, and we are conscious that other groups find it very offensive.
Yes.
But in Australia,
it's
a term. It can be used any which way. You know,
it's one of the most standard words in the vocabulary.
Yeah, daft. No.
It's interesting. I mean, one of the going back to what we discussed on Friday, I'm always intrigued to know which members of the. Do you think the Queen swore? You see?
Yes, I bet she swore. Like a
trooper. I think that
what
too.
What a fucking idiot! Hello, I'm the Queen.
Fucking idiot!
Get that fucking idiot out of my way!
Fucking idiot, Andrew. What's he done now?
Get that fucking Dubonnet over here.
I just would love to know what she really said.
Well, you can bet your life Philip swore like an absolute.
Well, can you imagine the conversation once they'd shut the door on the night Diana died, right? On the night Diana died, right?
God.
When they were being sent. Alistair was presumably already sending them recommended
speeches.
The People's Princess. Yes. What were they really?
Fucking hell.
Fucking hell.
Am I really going to have to read this shit out?
Oh, my God.
Can't we just fucking stay in Balmoral?
So yeah, posh. It's an interesting. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Posh people do swear.
Yes.
A lot more than they let on.
And they go to the toilet. They do all sorts of nasty things, And as Fitzgerald said about the rich to Ernest Hemingway, well, Ernest, the rich are different from you and me. And Ernest Hemingway replied, yes, they have more money.
Yeah, that's true.
Never want to miss the obvious.
And they're better, of course, as we both acknowledge.
Well, we know they're better.
Yeah, I mean, they tell us all the time.
Obviously, better.
I mean, have you noticed, by the way, that Jacob Rees-Mogg now has a Substack?
Does he?
Yes.
Do you have to pay for it?
Well, I was debating this because I don't want to give him any money. But on the other hand, I have a feeling that it might be rich pickings for the new European. We might have to get a.
We should do our own.
And he's doing. I think he's doing a video series as part of it on his 10 favourite monarchs, and that's going to be good.
Oh God. Oh, this man. Do you know the weird thing about him is he presents like an aristocrat, doesn't he?
Yes.
But he's not at all.
Not at all.
He's just
no.
Plum
It's
son,
actually
Nepo baby.
We're straying from the point here, really, but it is the point. The worst aspect of Britain is that the 80s were meant to be this great meritocratic explosion, right? And everyone was going. The ruling class was going to be swept aside, and people of ability were going to. But actually, all that happened was that people of ability started talking like posh people and sent their kids to Eton.
That's right. So you just reminded me. I used to work with a guy called Lloyd Embley, who was the editor of the Mirror, and we were really good friends. We started out together, and Lloyd ended up as editor-in-chief of the Mirror. But I remember Lloyd telling me that in the days when he used to phone up British Airways to book a flight, right? So pre-internet, he would always phone up and they would say, "And your name?" Said Lord Embley, right? And he would say, "Oh, Lord Embley, certainly." And then when he got to the gate with his upgrade, and they say, "It says Lloyd Embley here." So yeah, that's what I said. But the deference accorded to any sniff of poshness
amazing.
is
Although I think that the sort of the packing of the House of Lords in the last couple of decades with just anyone
with janitors and
God knows, right?
Charlotte
means
Owens
that knighthoods are now more by the truly greedy.
Yeah.
Knighthoods are now sought more
than a
yes, because if you phone up a restaurant and say, "My name's Lord Denkuda, take my usual table," they say, "Fuck off," right? Yeah. But if you say, "My name is Sir Matthew de Kelly," right?
Yes. It's only a matter of time.
You're in the corner.
Yeah, great. Lovely. Well, anyway, if you have any influence with the honours system,
here we are.
We're here waiting.
Warden of the Cinque Ports.
We'll have those.
Jewel of the Nile. Dial of Destiny. All those titles.
So yeah, from Matt Kelly of Bootle and
Lord Dancona of Catford.
Lord Dancona of Catford.
Have a lovely
Sunday,
and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, folks.